On the campaign trail, President Trump called for a, quote, total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering into the United States. And now we're seeing some of the geopolitical effects this kind of move could have abroad. During a week of legal and political unrest, Iran banned American citizens from entering, and the government of Iraq considered the same. Joining me now is Robert Ford. He is the former U.S. ambassador to Syria and former deputy U.S. ambassador to Iraq. He's also a professor at Yale. Thanks so much for being with us, Ambassador. Let me start by asking you, first of all, what was your reaction to Iraq and Syria being included in that list?
I think it was kind of a cheap political maneuver, frankly. No Syrian refugee admitted to the United States has committed any acts of terrorism in the United States. And we have a long experience with Iraqi refugees, over 150,000 Iraqi refugees admitted to the United States over the last 11 years. And out of them, only 2 have ever been arrested for terrorism-related charges in the United States. 1 out of 75,000 is a pretty small percentage. Seems like there are larger threats to the American public than Iraqi refugees.
How well thought out do you think that this executive order was?
Well, clearly the rollout shows that it wasn't well staffed and it wasn't well planned. But as I said, I think it was, frankly, more of a gesture to the new administration's electoral base rather than a measure actually intended to boost American domestic security. If it had been intended to boost American domestic security, they would have included in it other countries where we actually have had citizens commit real acts of terror in the United States or against the United States.
I'm curious, Mr. Ford, you were the last American ambassador to serve in Syria. You visited opposition areas, you met with demonstrators. What kind of effect do you see this ban having on the conflict that is raging right now in Syria?
As a result of the horrific violence, the barrel bombs, the chemical weapons on civilians, the terrible toll of civilian casualties, radical groups in Syria have become stronger. There is no question about that. The Americans didn't help the moderates very much either, so that also enabled the radicals to go stronger. So there is a need for a vetting process. I don't doubt that. There is a vetting system in operation. It works well. But the ban that the executive order published will increase the assumption among many in Syria who watch the Americans stand by through barrel bombs, watch the Americans stand by through chemical weapons, etc. And they will just say, not only do the Americans not care about civilian casualties among Muslims, but the Americans actually don't like Muslims. That feeds into a jihadi recruitment narrative, which I think is dangerous.
We only have about a minute or so left, so I want to get to this question about Russia. In an interview over the weekend, President Trump compared U.S. actions to those of Russia and Vladimir Putin, saying, quote, "You think our country's so innocent." He's facing fallout now from people on both sides of the aisle. First of all, what's your reaction to that? And secondly, do you think that Russia can potentially be a reliable partner when it comes to dealing with the conflict in Syria, as some people within the Trump administration have suggested?
Look, I think it's absolutely outrageous, and I do mean outrageous, for the president to compare the things that our American military does or our American CIA does to what Russian intelligence, former KGB, modern FSB, or what the Russian military has done. Just look at the way the Russian military bombed hospitals in Syria, intentionally bombed hospitals. The Americans don't do that. So I'm afraid the president is just completely wrong about his comparison. In terms of working with the Russians against the Islamic State, look, there are plenty of airplanes dropping bombs on the Islamic State already. I have never understood that the problem with the battle against the Islamic State is that we don't have enough airplanes dropping bombs and we need more bombs, this time from Russia. essentially the problem in Iraq. The problem in Syria is a political problem, and the Russians are not helping much to find a political solution that would undercut the jihadi recruitment.
All right, Ambassador Robert Ford, I'm afraid we're out of time, but thank you so much for your insight and perspective. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.